Hey, welcome back to the Tech Ed Clubhouse Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Jason Kennedy, who is a curriculum director from a small rural school down in Georgia, and also an author of Let's Stop Teaching and Start Designing Learning, a practical guide. Jason, welcome to the show. Fill in the blanks on what you do, where you come from, and a little bit of your history.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Just a 25-year educator. Um, been in every level of school there is, from elementary all the way up to teaching college on the side. But currently, my role is curriculum professional learning director in my district, small district, less than about 4,000 students total here in South Georgia. But that's my day job. My side job is author and consultant, where you know had a book published by Routledge back in 2023, and just the whole book came out of my work as an instructional coach, but also as my own personal experience when I realized that, hey, a lot of us went to school and got these education degrees, and we just got fed content, and really nobody really ever taught us what works best for learning, how learning works, all that other stuff. Graduated college back in 2000. So since then, thank goodness, we've had a whole lot of cognitive science research and a whole lot of other stuff that kind of backs up some of the things that I saw that worked in the classroom, just didn't know why. So um, the book came out of teachers just asking me, well, what does this look like? What am I supposed to do? What does this look like in the classroom? So that came out in 2023, before the age of AI that we're living in, and since then, I've just developed all these free GPTs and gems um, for teachers, and just kind of put them out there based on the work in the book. So it's just really exciting, letting teachers you know take advantage of the two things they're asking the most for: time and resources, and this kind of gives both of those back.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I'm talking about on my show too is we're getting back to being able to do what we wanted to do when we went into teaching, and that's actually have conversations with the students, talk to the students, because that's why we got into this profession. So you talk about stop teaching and start designing learning. What are some things that you're seeing that teachers do that looks like teaching, but doesn't, produce the learning that we want?
Right. So, I talk about in the book, a lot of, I kind of go into reasons why we should quit teaching. And one of them is the act of teaching is really passive for the learner, right? It's not a very active process for them. So, the I would love for us to, and there might be a multitude of benefits for this, stop calling ourselves teachers and maybe call ourselves learning engineers, just because it sounds more professional,
Yeah, I
and
like it.
might even get us a pay raise. But we're learning engineers, right? We are paid. The school exists, the technology exists, the supplies exist, our salaries, everything is provided to make learning happen. And what happened with me when I went to the classroom is I just went into the classroom and did what was done to me, except I tried to make it better
Yeah.
and put my own spin on it. But it wasn't until midway through my career when I read that quote from, Fisher, Hattie, and Fry: "Every student deserves a great teacher, not by chance, but by design." Just because you land in my room versus Dan's room versus, the room down the hallway shouldn't change the learning experience that they have. So they've just discovered some, what works best for learning. What does science say works best for learning? And here's how we can incorporate it every day. Now, going back to your question about, teaching, a lot of our stuff is compliance based. As long as and I can hide really well as a learner in the room if I'm just quiet and look like I'm doing my work. Right? It's all about the work and doing the work. And I come in, I sit down, I take my notes, I do my assignment, I turn it in, I walk out. Nobody will know if I didn't learn anything. Right?
100%.
The only person that will know is me. And we got really great compliant kids sometimes. Uh, and then on the opposite ends of the spectrum, we got kids, tearing the room up. Well, both of these things can be alleviated by what we bring to the classroom as far as our design. And all that happens before we ever walk in the room.
Yeah, and I just actually did my podcast recently on that kid that might struggle in the academic class, so to speak. I don't know if you listened to it this past week, but um, but you could take them into a special area class, like a tech class or a shop class or an art class, and all of a sudden that kid is not a behavior problem and they're flourishing. Is that what you're kind of talking about when you're talking about design for learning?
Well, when I talk about design, we're talking about three big pieces in the classroom. We're talking about the teacher, the learner, and the content, right? Those are the three pieces that are going on interactive all the time. The teacher has to have clarity with the content, meaning kids need to know what the learning objective is, what's our goal for the day. They need to have a relevant task, an engaging task, and they need to know what success looks like through success criteria. That's that teacher to content clarity element. The teacher to student, teacher to learner thing, unless the relationships we build, right? We got to have that in place. And then the learner and the content, piece of that is, are we designing tasks? Because my phrase is, tasks must be designed, not just assigned. They got to be designed for two things: engagement and evidence of learning. And so, are we designing tasks that are going to engage students? I mean, some of our kids get thrown worksheet after worksheet after worksheet, or digital worksheet after digital worksheet after digital worksheet
Right.
on a Chromebook. Uh, and so the engagement's not there, but the evidence of learning might be. All right. Well, let's flip it. I can have engagement. I visited a school one time, like on an accreditation visit, and I go into the seventh grade biology classroom, and they're putting beads on pipe cleaners to represent, DNA strains. And part of that evaluation process is me going around and asking learners, "Hey, what are you learning today?" Well, there's 28 kids in the room. I get through about 10 of them, and I'm asking, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you learning today?" "I don't know. I'm just putting beads on pipe cleaners." And so I'm looking around, and all 28 kids are actively engaged in learning. They're having quote unquote fun, which is our biggest mistake. But there's no evidence of learning. So you gotta have both. You gotta have it designed for engagement, and there are qualities you can design in a task that make it engaging for kids. Some of our classes, like you just mentioned, like that computer class, that art class, or the ag class, those are engaging just by the nature of the course because they have that novelty that kids don't get in other things. Novelty is one of those engagement, you know, qualities.
Hmm.
If I have a novelty, that's one of the 8 qualities that you can design in engagement to get engagement in task. So, um, you know, we really have to. The next book that's coming out, and the working title is Task, Scaffold, Feedback, Repeat. That very first thing, task. If there's anything we can do to improve the learning of our room, is look at the tasks we're giving kids and making sure that those things are designed for engagement and evidence of learning.
You know, you you talk about engagement, right? I'm a big proponent of this. I was a STEM teacher. I'm a recovering middle school teacher. I taught seventh grade for 32 years, and I taught STEM. Loved it. Again, the nature of the class is engagement, and kids are busy and hands on. Um, what if I got I like what I like to call the core four, right? Math, science, social studies, ELA, right? If I got those teachers listening here and they're looking for something, and you walk into their classroom, how do you know the kids are engaged versus compliant?
Well, that's where you have to have the conversations. We gotta talk to these kids and find out, and that's where it kind of we do a lot of heavy lifting for our learners when it should be them doing that heavy lifting and learning, right? So, um, when I work with other schools and other other parts of the country, my whole conversation revolves around teacher clarity. What is the goal? What is the task? What does success look like? And if we give students an engaging task and they know before going into this task what success looks like for this task, 75% of your kids will be off and running, right? They can be owners of their own learning because if they know what success looks like, and I have designed tools for them to escape their own misunderstanding or accelerate their learning. Because right now, you know what their favorite tool is in a classroom. Every classroom in the United States, students' favorite tool is this. That's their favorite tool for learning. We got to cut it out because that's why we're running ragged at the end of the day. And the kids are doing backflips down the hallway because we've drained all our energy in the classroom because we're running around answering these. We got to have this in place where we've got success criteria, we got tools they can go access. 75% of my class will be off and running. The 5 or 6 kids that really need my intensive attention to get them started in the learning, well, that's who I pull over here. Because all these other kids know what success looks like, know what tools to go and try out and work through before they ever get to this. And they can be off and running. So when I look for engagement, I'm looking for kids who are, engagement's not entertainment.
Right.
You got that all twisted. Engagement is that urge to participate, to be in some things, and to work through some things. And again, that all goes. The very first thing goes back to what's the task we're designing for these kids, and we can't keep blaming the kids for lack of engagement.
No.
We if you brought to me what I used to bring to my own kids, I'd be like, I'll do this because I know the consequences I'm going to face at home or at school because of it. And so that's my compliance, but I'm not really invested in it, mentally or emotionally. So, just having these pieces, letting the learners do the heavy lifting of the learning. If the teacher in the room is the one doing the most talking, the most questioning, the most work, then there's a lot of teaching happening in the room, maybe not a whole lot of learning.
Right. And I've read, and one of the things that kind of hits home, I'm sure you've read Dr. Liliadal's book, Thinking Classrooms. Phenomenal book. And it really kind of sheds some light on stuff like we were talking about. Who's doing the work, right? So when we're talking about like these kids, the students doing the thinking, right, versus the compliance piece, right? And you got success criteria. Is there a multiple avenues to that success for the kid?
Absolutely. That's one of your. I mean, that's one of your design premises of a task is personal response or choice. Those are two different. I'm referencing Antonelli and Garber, right? Antonelli and Garber wrote this 17,000 classroom visits can't be wrong. And they discovered that there's 8 qualities that if you put in a task, you can get engagement. Well, their research found that we only had to have 3 of these 8 tasks in it, embedded in this task, and you get 87% sustained engagement. So one of those is personal response. Can I bring my own thoughts, feelings, opinions, whatever, to this task? Another one is choice. Do I have a choice in how I respond to the task or the product I produced for my evidence of learning? That's 2 of the 8 right there. So absolutely, yeah. Success criteria. Some of the best success criteria I've seen when I work with teachers is ones that are co-created with the students. Right. If our goal today is to walk out of here saying that I can solve a two-step equation, well, what is this solution or what does solving a two-step equation successfully look like? What are the concrete pieces that I could see as a learner in my own work and see in others, and the teacher can see in all of our work? What does that look like? And that's how you start that success criteria conversation. Yeah, I've got some teachers that all they do is co-create success criteria with teachers. I mean, with their learners. I have, I have many teachers that's what they do in their collaborative teams. Is they come together and they look at student work and they define that success criteria. I've got some teachers, like a lot of the things I'm mentioning, like engaging task design, success criteria, I've developed AI tools that will help because, some of our teachers are singletons. They
That
don't
was
have
me.
that. Yeah. They don't have that person to bounce ideas off of or have conversations with. That's one of the reasons why I developed, a lot of these AI tools around the work on the book is because, we got a lot of those singletons who don't have that benefit of a colleague in the building, and these AI tools can be a tremendous help to them too.
Absolutely. That's 100% my experience, and I jumped on the AI bandwagon in, what was it, late 2023, when it really kind of, I mean, it's been there for a while, but when Chat GPT really exploded on the scene, I'm like, this is a game changer for us teachers to take that assignment that I've done for 20 years, right? That's a good quality assignment, but just make that little tweak, right? You're not telling teachers to say, hey, what you're doing is terrible, right? You're doing the wrong thing. You're not saying that. And I don't think, I think that's where we're heading. And I'm not saying that either. What you're saying is you're doing some good things, but let's make it better.
That's the opening conversation I have with any school I go work with is no one is doing anything wrong.
Right.
You have shown up to work, and if you are not here to intentionally harm children, you've done everything right. You've done everything right just by showing up today. It's not about right or wrong. It's about, like you just said, how can we make what we're doing better for learning?
Yeah, I'm working on some stuff right now myself where, we're talking about working for the kid that's in the room. And that kid could be your first block kid in your second block class, could be the same topic, but totally different assignments, totally different tasks because the kids are different.
Mhm.
And with AI, I can take 10, 15, 20 minutes of my day, maybe a half an hour with one of your tools and say, hey, I can make this applicable to the kid in front of me. And now all of a sudden, that kid that would be disengaged doing your two-step equations now has a reason to do it because there's value in it without a heavy lift from the teacher.
Exactly.
And then you get back into teaching. I mean, education is so glacially slow to move to change anyways,
For sure.
because like you said at the beginning, right? Our teachers, we do what we were taught, how we were taught. And everybody's an expert on education because everybody went through school. And I say everybody, I'm generalizing, right? I realize not everybody's gone through school. Um, and you're talking about these things, and I kind of have a thought process here, but I want to hear yours. You talk about engagement versus compliance, right? And I always think about that kid that plays the game of school, that they're the academically stronger kid potentially, right? They're the kid that's getting the hundreds and the straight A's and all that stuff. But in my class, when it was open ended and multiple avenues to a solution, they kind of struggled because they didn't know where to start because they hadn't struggled. Um, how do you address that with some of the training, some of the stuff in your books that you're doing?
Well, when it comes to, you hear the talk about productive struggle,
Yes.
and and some people think that is necessary, and some people and some would argue that you need to design productive struggle into your task. Not necessarily, right?
No.
Uh, Kids don't need to struggle. Now, struggle might inform you about what the kid already knows and whatever else, but we don't want to design struggle on purpose, right? Uh, this next book that I'm coming out with really kind of dives deeper into the cognitive science behind it. We talk about cognitive load and extraneous load and and all this other stuff that we need to kind of take into account when we design what we're having learners to do. Um, some of our kids are good at school because of the homes they come from, right?
Hmm.
When I talk with teachers, what I do is I bring a trash can up to the front of the room, and I tell the teachers, I was like, you know what? I've already worked out with the principals. If you just ball up your notes you're taking right now, and anyone who makes this basket, you got the rest of the month off with pay. Well, all the teachers that are really close to the trash can, they're pumped, right? The ones in the back of the room are ticked. I said, I'm giving everyone the equal opportunity to make the basket. I said, but it's not equitable because you guys here in the front of the room, let's translate it to the classroom. You guys here in the front of the room come from homes who sit down at dinner every night or have conversations or have resources or go to museums or have internet or all this other stuff that really makes school easy because I got a lot of content I can attach new knowledge to. You kids in the back, school's the only place you got a hot meal. School's the only place you don't get yelled at. School, my wife grew up in a horrible home life, and she's a counselor and a student support director because of it. Didn't have a bed until she was almost a teenager, and then the grandfather came and said, "I'm going to buy you a bed." I mean, you got kids like that who are at our doors, so you've got to take all that into account. And what our design should do is bring everybody up equidistant to learning as much as possible.
Absolutely.
And that's where scaffolds get a bad name because we think we're lowering the rigor. Scaffolds are not intended to lower the rigor, right? The bar is the bar. The bar stays the same. Our job is to coach up, scaffold up, learn up anybody up who needs it. And then once they're there, we take those scaffolds away.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot right there too. I mean that's just to think about all the stuff we've been taught in teacher school, and then you walk into the classroom and it's like this isn't what they taught us. You know, and I my argument too, because I'm big in the CTE area as well, and getting kids into what's it going to be like when you get a job, right? I couldn't tell you the last time in the 32 years of teaching that I took a standardized test. Now I'm not saying there's not a place for that,
Sure.
right? I'm not saying there's not a place for worksheets and tests and quizzes. You still need those things. You still need the check for knowledge, right? But one of the nice parts about, and maybe you can share your thoughts on this too, with these projects like you're talking about and these different ways to show your learning, is by the time that assignment is handed in, grading is accomplished because you've talked to the kid, right? So I'm just thinking the teacher, I'm going to pick on an ELA teacher for now. I got a classroom of 30 kids. I got 5 of those classrooms. I'm getting 150 essays, right? And they're all going to be different, right? They're all going to be different topics based on around whatever we're writing about. Now I got to read those. But if you're having conversations with the kids, you kind of already know what's going to be in that paper, right? And you've given that kid, or maybe you're using your AI tools. So does that change the role of the teacher in the assessment piece by designing the learning?
The all of our parents at one time or another came home. We came home and they asked, "What'd you learn at school today?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
What was our answer?
Nothing.
Nothing. Right? The question we should really be asking as parents to our kids is, "What feedback did you get today?" Because feedback is about learning, and so my role as a teacher is should be driven by feedback, and the feedback we give the most is that grade on the paper.
Absolutely.
And the second most feedback that we get is good job or fix that. Those are also 2 least likely to improve learning, right?
100% agree with you.
So our job in the work session, for using vocabulary from my book, is I can't give true feedback unless I have a goal, right? Some kind of learning objective, learning target for the day, and a success criteria. Because without those 2 things, I can say, okay, here's where the goal is. Here's where you currently are according to the success criteria. Okay, here's your next steps in your learning. That's feedback. And that feedback can only be accomplished with those 2 things. And then those our kids take the tools or the resources or the escapes from misunderstanding or the pathways to enrichment, and they move upward in that learning. based on our feedback, whether that's an essay or two-step equation or any kind of projects. Like, and again, to your point, are all worksheets bad? Absolutely not. Right? Some are better than others. But if worksheets are all we give kids, well, then we got a problem. Right? They don't call them learning sheets; they call them worksheets because they're typically about
Right.
work and not really about learning. So, um, some of the AI tools that I have on my slide deck on the website are about designing success, design success criteria, design engaging task. They take those engage 8 elements that Antonio and Garber, you know, noticed in their research, and it embeds them into a task. And the beautiful thing about the AI tools is if I don't like it, I tell it to make another one, or another one, or another one. I got a task choice generator that you give it a learning target and the grade level of learning, it'll spit out 5 or 6 different choices
Mm-hmm.
based on whatever you input. So all these things that I'm throwing out there, like success criteria and learning targets and feedback, um, can, I tell teachers, I need all of your prep time and you're going to get all of your class time back. Right. And that's all design work is if I design with learning in mind, I'm going to get all my class time back and I'm going to get all my energy back. And I'm going to be the one doing backflips and cartwheels out the hallway at the end of the day. And the kids are going to be dragging because they've done the heavy lifting to learn instead of me.
So, we're talking about worksheets, and I'm just going to pick on them a little bit, right? Because they're a staple, right? We're not gonna get rid of them. We're still gonna have sheets to fill out, whether it's a $500 worksheet on the Chromebook, or we're handing out pencil and paper. And I'm all for both, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you need to go analog, sometimes you need to go digital. But in your workshops, in your book, what are a couple of design moves that would take that worksheet and make it a little bit higher impact? Or you pick. Maybe it's a lecture, maybe it's a project. What are some design moves that a teacher could do tomorrow? I like what I call the Tuesday test.
Sure.
That they could make it a bigger impact without maybe a heavy lift.
I mean, one of the things really is that we've done with maybe worksheets or graphic organizers or note sheets, if you want to call them anything, is we've made kids into movers. And what I mean by that is a kid comes and sits down and there's a slide deck on the that I'm going to lecture through, and all his responsibility is to take the word off the board and put it on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I physically made him a mover to move this word from here down on the paper and done nothing else with it. Okay. If that information is so important that I got to write it down in my note sheet, why not give them that information in the first place and then have them do something with it? Right. Have conversations with somebody that, here's this information. If this is the goal of the day or this is the question of the day or whatever else, what in here seems important to you? What looks like it would help answer this question? You identify some stuff. The guy next to you identifies some stuff. All right, let's talk about it. What did you find? What did you find? What are some commonalities? I mean, have those conversations, those discussions, instead of transferring one word here to my sheet. You know, or talk about graphic organizers. Most graphic organizers, the teacher makes ahead of time
Mm-hmm.
as the kid fill in. That's not really how graphic organizers really should work. Is I present the information and the kid graphically organizes the information best suited to his learning. Right. That's why sketch notes have a really high effect size for learning because now I'm not just outlining information. I am illustrating concepts and connections that I feel like make sense.
Exactly. That goes back to like mnemonic devices and stuff like that, and songs and all that kind of stuff. Um, I love that. I love that. I love to start with an activity, right? I'm all about let's, in fact, I talked about that the other day. with starting your class with an activity to apply that knowledge before I provide that content that you're talking about. But I love the fact that you're having a conversation with the kids, right? You want, because that now you figure out how that kid learns, right? And what they think like. And I can just hear too now teachers going, well, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I can't do that in my class because it's going to take some time. Right. And I'm like, yeah. Right. Do you agree with that? It's going to take some time but it becomes easier, right?
Well, here's the pressure that teachers feel is we've got all these standards and we got to cover them.
Yes.
Right? And so let's talk about Common Core for just a second. Common Core takes 22 and a half years to completely cover. Last I checked, we don't have 22 and a half years. And this is from a study. So 22 and a half years to cover the Common Core standards. Last I checked, we don't have kids for 22 and a half years. So right off the bat, let's just go ahead and say we will not be able to cover all the standards as they're currently written. So what do you do? And we've gotten new standards here in Georgia. So we've gone through this process the last couple of years in my own district. Take your standards, bust them up into daily learning targets. When I say daily learning targets, I need to know what the goal for learning today is for this lesson, right? Not the week, not I can write a narrative essay. Teachers love those because I can leave it on the board for a week and whatever else. But
Absolutely.
here's the problem. Dan, you're here today. You're not going to be here tomorrow. The guy next to you wasn't here yesterday, but I got you both in the room today. You need to know what learning is today so we can see where we are, see where we go, wrap it up in a nice little box because our brains like that stuff. So bust those standards up into learning targets. So here's the conversation I have with my teachers. All right, we bust them all up in learning targets. We got 242 learning targets. Awesome. You have 180 days of school. What are we going to do? They're like, oh my gosh. And so I said, I'm going to throw another curveball at you. You have 180 days of school with kids. You might have 140 days before we test.
Mm-hmm.
So in your collaborative teams slash PLCs, I don't call them PLCs, I call them collaborative teams. In your collaborative teams, you must bring your professional knowledge to the table and decide out of these 242 targets we developed, what are the nice to knows and what are the needs to knows? Needs to knows is, by God, they don't leave fourth grade ELA without these mastered. They don't cross the line without these. Over here, it'd be nice if they got these, but they don't leave without these. And that's where the equity is. No kid leaves us without these. This is the bar. No kids leaves us without these needs to knows. These nice to knows, they'd be nice to get to, but God knows these needs to knows, they don't leave without these. And once you get that in your head, you start discovering that learning takes time and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to focus more time, retrieval practice, all this other stuff that might take more time up in the classroom, but it makes learning stick rather than skimming through and moving through the standards and it all, half of it falling out before we ever get to the test.
Right. Or falling out after that standardized test that they take in May that's going on right now. Right. So, wrapping up here, if you had to choose what matters most in the classroom, is it what the teacher does or what the student does? I think I know the answer to this.
I'll wrap it up later. I'll kind
of. A loaded question.
Yeah. Well, we get to decide who comes to the room as teachers. And teachers like, no, I don't get to choose. Whoever shows up at my door is who shows up at my door. Now, hear me out. We can have students walk in our door or we can have learners walk in our door, right? Students come to the door, they come in, they take their notes, they listen to their lecture, they do their assignment, they turn it in, they get their grade, they walk out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Learners, though, engage in a task, access tools, make decisions, have conversations, uh, reflect, revise, all this other stuff, and evaluate their own work and show evidence of learning. That's what learners do. Now, whoever shows up to my room, that's on me because that's what my design has been tailored to. If I want to bring in a, hey, read the passage and answer the questions at the end of it, that's more kind of student based kind of work. But if I want to bring some learning into the room, I got to design something different. So who's more important? The teacher's design is the most important thing. Uh, and and I'll segue into this. The other thing teachers need to understand is that we are professionals just like doctors and lawyers, and what they do is called a practice.
Mhm.
That's what this teaching thing is. It's a practice. You will fail. It will bomb. It will bomb first block. It will bomb fourth block. Whatever it is, it will bomb and give yourself grace. It is okay.
Yeah.
Right? We just come back the next day and we try to do it better. And so what we do for the design, most important, the second most important thing is what are those learners doing in the classroom with our design?
So they're both important, as equally important, because we're designing the work and the kids have to do the work in the learning. Jason, if somebody wants to find out more about what you do, get you into their school, talk about it, find information about your book, where can they find you?
Yeah, easiest place. It's kind of easy to remember. It's letsquitteaching.com. Uh, the publisher kind of changed the title of the book when I published it to Let's Stop Teaching because we were
Right.
just coming out of COVID and we didn't want to give the wrong message. But 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 my whole philosophy is we got to quit teaching and really focus on design learning. So Let's Quit Teaching is the website. You can find I write weekly, maybe biweekly blog posts about all things learning. Um, you'll find my contact information there. You'll also find the slide deck where I have about right now 33 AI tools that will develop a whole lot of the stuff we've talked about from apps, complete whole lessons from start to finish, or just segments of lessons like, hey, I want an activating strategy for my opener, or I want a summarizing strategy for my closer. You know, success criteria in multiple different ways. So letsquitteaching.com, slide decks there, all the links to my contact information there. And, you know, feel free to sign up for the newsletter when I ask you to, no pressure at all. Uh,
Right.
but again, just trying to put that information out there and these tools out there, not, I don't earn any money off of them. They're completely free with a chat GPT account or a Google, Gemini account. Uh, because, we're all in this education thing together and the more we can give back to each other and share with each other, the better. So
Awesome, Jason. It was my pleasure to have you talking to you today. I know selfishly I love doing these things because I get to learn something about what's going on in other parts of the country and reinforce that we're doing some awesome things. Again, thanks for stopping in. Thanks for reaching out and having this conversation. If you want to find Jason and get in touch with him, I'll put all the links down in the show notes. So you can just click on those and head right over and buy the book, get some quality information from Jason. Thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah.